Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I
button?
thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by Mountain Ops, making outdoor energy and performance nutrition to make you a stronger and healthier elk hunter. They have a full line of hunting-related supplements, including meal replacement shakes, multivitamins, pre-workout fuel, and post-workout recovery. And my favorite, their new performance protein bars that, by the way, are packed with 270 calories and 20 grams of protein, but contain less than 6 grams of sugar. Visit mountainops.com to learn more and to order, and be sure to use the promo code ELKTALK to save on your next order.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
And we have a promo code for Gerber as well. Just use the code ELKTALK to save 20% on your orders at gerbergear.com. And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or BuglingBull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
Lastly, the University of Elk Hunting online course is a proud partner of the Elk Talk Podcast. And within the University of Elk Hunting online course, you're going to find nearly 60 chapters organized in 17 modules of elk hunting instruction aimed at making you a more successful elk hunter. From planning and e-scouting to calling strategies and packing, every imaginable elk hunting topic is included in the online course. And regardless of your previous elk hunting experience or success, I'm confident the University of Elk Hunting online course will make you a more confident, more successful elk hunter. Just visit elk101.com and use the promo code ELKTALK to save 20% when you sign up for a membership to the University of Elk Hunting online course.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Hey, Corey, how's life in Idaho?
Well, it's still cold, but it's still good, so
Man,
no
it
complaints.
was colder here this morning. I don't know what happened overnight. I went to bed and it was, in the 20s. I woke up this morning, it was 12 below zero.
Yeah.
What the heck's going on here? I'm going to have to back up and move.
It's about the same for me.
Really? You guys got it that cold over there today?
Hey, Randy, I'm not getting anything on my audio line here. Is it recording it?
Yeah, it's recording it. Hey, Corey, it's recording. Quit. See, it's so cold that the gerbil that runs your internet went into hibernation.
Evidently, yeah, it was cold. I was the same. It was 21 when I got home from the basketball game last night, and I got up this morning. Of course we won.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So really what I did is I put your audio track on flatline just so you wouldn't be able to see it.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot.
Because I can hear you, but your video is not coming through. So if we ever publish the video from this podcast, it's going to be just a blank screen that says Corey Jacobson waiting.
Yeah. And then you, in all of your glory, sitting in your office on video, which I get to see. It was too cold here. I think my video wouldn't even come up this morning, but Randy's is up. So I get to look at him. He's looking at a blank screen. So I'm talking to a person. He's talking to a wall. So if I sound more engaged in a conversation than Randy does, that would explain why.
Yeah. Well, you got to leave in a little over an hour, so we got to get right to it here. No storytelling about my wife blowing snow with a broken leg and all that kind of stuff anymore.
That's the best part of the podcast.
I know. Actually, someone who listens to the podcast from Idaho said, your wife deserves a puppy. Because he heard me talking about we're without a dog. He emailed me this morning. I got to get back to him. He wants to give my wife a little lap dog.
Wow.
Yeah. Great guy. So
I guess I won't say anything bad about lap dogs right now.
Can we talk about...
I was going to say, you can probably only give those things away, can't you?
No. I think they're like $4,000 a piece.
I was going to say, those lap dogs are expensive.
Yeah. That's the cheap part. Just wait till you get the vet bill and all the designer dog food and
and a designer purse to carry it around in.
Oh yeah, gotta have that. Yeah. So I'd rather carry my wife's purse around town than to carry a little pink bag with a little fluffy dog stuffed in it. It's like, honey, are you really gonna do this? You're gonna make me carry this dog around like this? Anyhow, my man card is gone that day. Anyhow, I said we weren't going to do that because we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about Arizona. We're going to talk about some of the emails and comments we got from the audience. We're going to talk about some people being mad at Utah.
I thought you were going to say mad at me. You said you.
No. Here's what we should do. We should categorize all the emails that we get and put them in the likes Corey, hates Randy pile. And those two would be about the same.
No.
Now, if we had the likes Corey, likes Randy pile, it'd look like it'd be very disproportionate. So,
no. Have you read the comments on the Destination Elk episodes that have launched so far?
Yeah, some of them.
They are 100% positive, and they love Team Fresh Tracks. So whether it's you or Michael, they like one of you enough to outweigh any disdain they might have towards the other one, because there's nothing negative being said.
Then they all like Michael, is what I can say. Well. But the whole grouse stuff, I got to look and see. I didn't watch the most recent episode. Have you let the grouse out of the bag yet?
Not yet.
To all of it?
No,
okay.
You're still out in the open grasslands chasing big herds of elk. Yeah,
and haven't found a grouse yet, which is grounds for why I would think about pulling up and moving. And I lied to the camera crew, like, I don't think we'll ever catch up to these elk. Well, really, what it is, it's not that. There aren't any grouse out here. Hell with this herd of 200 elk. I lied to them. I said, the elk just they went into the other unit. We got to go.
You couldn't catch up. You couldn't catch up with an elk if it was tied to a tree.
No.
And the reason why is you would start going that direction, then you get pulled off by a grouse. You would never make it to that elk. If he was bugling, raking the tree, tied to the tree, standing on one leg, couldn't go anywhere, you would still not get a shot at that elk because there might be a grouse somewhere in the vicinity, and you would go looking for that grouse.
Well, my proudest moment of Destination Elk Season 4 is the way we put it to the grouse, like, oh man. And then I had some doubters in camp, and when you see me cook this grouse for them with Kim Newberg's not world famous, world's best, but unknown grouse seasoning, you guys, the audience is going to be like, when's Newberg starting his own grouse season business?
Why am I always the last to find out about things? I still don't have a Peaks headlamp.
Uh-huh.
Now you're telling me, I've hunted with you, I've shot grouse with you.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew there was a world's best and unknown seasoning for grouse. You just shared it with the entire audience of Elk Talk podcast at the same time I find out. Why am I always last to know things?
Because you're the guy who put a 12-pound rock in my pack in New Mexico and didn't tell me about it till that night.
Oh, man.
So, there you go.
I forgot all about that. I don't deserve to know.
You were also the guy who gave me the stink eye one day when I was stopping in Montana as we were chasing a bull that was bugling, and you and Lauren and me are running up the hill. You're running, I'm puffing up the hill, and there's a grouse. And I go on a little detour, and you're like, where's Randy? Where's Randy? So I'm like, check with him. I'm not sharing my world's best grouse seasoning. Hey, we'll just use salt and pepper and flour. That's good enough. And it is good. But
it was good. Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry. But I'm sure the audience is like, do these guys ever get around to giving any elk advice?
In a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way. That's all on your shoulders. So I'm an accountant, so I deal with deadlines, okay? I'm going to tell everybody right now before we forget that the deadline for Arizona elk applications is February 8th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Arizona time. So don't miss that deadline.
And is that to purchase a point as well as apply?
Yes. So
thank you for the reminder.
Don't mess up. And you, as sure as the sun is going to rise in the east tomorrow, Arizona's system is going to crash the morning of the 8th.
Absolutely.
It happens every year. Last summer it didn't in the deer and sheep draw, but if Vegas would let me put money on whether or not Arizona has a technology malfunction the last day of their application, I'm going down to Vegas and putting a big wad of cash on that. So don't be that person, right? So this podcast probably isn't going to drop until the day before. So.
Yeah. So when this podcast drops, if you have not applied for Arizona or bought your point there for this year, and you're planning on doing it, you've already procrastinated. Yeah. So this is final call.
Yeah. And I apologize, Corey, that I've been behind the 8 ball, but we have elk politics going on here in Montana right now like I've not seen in 30 years.
Really?
What's in front of the hunters of Montana is a fundamental change of elk tag allocation, elk seasons, elk management like nothing I've ever seen. So all of you who are thinking about applying in Montana this year, wait to see what the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Commission votes to do this Friday. But in the interim, it's been rather draining on my time. But oh well, that's how it goes, you know. I didn't move to Montana to make tons of money. I moved here for the elk hunting. So this always catches legislators off guard or policymakers. They're like, why are you so worked up about this? You only pay $20 for an elk tag. Well, if I would have stayed at that big national CPA firm and been a partner there, I'd be making about $2 million a year right now. And I'm not making a tenth of that. So you want to know how much my resident elk tag cost me? So, and then they're like, ooh, never thought about that. So, you know, I'm sure I bet you the same applies in Idaho, right? It's not like anyone moves to Donnelly, Idaho to make tons of money.
No.
Right?
No, in fact, there's not much of an economy here, and the cost of living is super high. So there's sacrifices that have to be made to live where you want to live.
Yeah. And so when you, Mr. Politician, or you out-of-state billionaire, use your tools of leverage and power, don't think that guys like me and all the other folks who could leave Montana to make lots of money, but we stay here and forego all that because of the good hunting, don't be surprised when we show up and we're a little bit hot under the collar here.
Yeah.
So that's part of why this podcast is being done today instead of 3 days ago. Sorry about that.
No worries on my part.
So,
but yeah, it's I know when Idaho goes through it, and we have the bonus point proposal, and there's some minor ones this year. It is an energy drain when you have to spend all your time and energy to put statistics together and then present it and try to get people on board to, there's 99% of the people agree with you, but only about 1% of them will actually take the time to send in their voice and make it heard. And so it takes energy.
Yeah. But the good news is in all of my platforms, I've been providing the email addresses for the 7 Fish, Wildlife, and Parks commissioners.
Yep.
And one of them called me yesterday and said, Randy, do you know how many emails we are getting? I'm like, woo, good. And this commissioner has taken time to meet and talk with so many people. I'm very impressed with that person.
That's great.
And so where the vote will end up, I don't know. But the first proposal, are you ready for this, Corey?
Yeah.
Did I tell you what the first proposal was?
Nope, I haven't heard. I know there's a bunch going on.
Unlimited bull tags if you're hunting on private land, and cut the quota for public land hunters in half.
Huh.
It's like
it almost seems like there's a special interest involved in.
Yeah. So I told some people, and I'm getting ready to do my Hunt Talk Radio podcast next week based on how this vote happens. I'm like, sounds to me like I could become the governor of Montana if I ran on a campaign slogan, "Bulls for Billionaires," and. It's like, really? This is somebody thought that was a good idea to put in black and white. All you billionaires who are complaining that you have to stand in line and draw a tag with the peasants, the rest of us lowly, what was it, basket of deplorables? You don't want to stand in line with that, so we're going to give you guys unlimited tags. And all of us standing in that long line, the line's going to move a lot slower because we're going to give away half as many.
Wow!
Like somebody thought that was a good idea.
So
and it was all sold as a way to reduce elk numbers, to kill more cow elk. I missed the logic along the way, so someone send me back to population management 101. I did not know that letting private land hunters kill all the bulls is a way to get rid of the cows.
Wow. Well, it definitely solves the problem. The problem of them needing to please their wealthy landowner friends, and that's about the only problem I think I can see it working.
Yeah. So to his credit, the director of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks came on my podcast, and I released it this week. And I gave him a chance to explain all this, where did everything come from? And it's a very interesting conversation. He talks about the frustration these out-of-state billionaires have when they buy these ranches, and then they find out they don't come with tags. That they got to stand in line with the other non-residents. And I said, maybe he ought to take that up with his realtor and say, who's your errors and omission insurance company? Because you forgot to tell me this, or you lied to me about it or something. I don't know. That's not my problem. I don't think that we're going to have the Wall Street Billionaire Sympathy Fund anytime soon funded or worried about by Montana resident hunters. And so I'm talking about this right now because, quite honestly, Corey, these kind of things unfold in every state. They pop up and this stuff happens. And it's like, all right, I've had enough. I've tried to work within the system. I've tried to be the well-behaved citizen. I've tried to use my media platforms to try guide hunters along the way, but I'll be honest, I'm like ready to come off the rails over just the insult of how this happened. I mean, it insults your intelligence for somebody to say, oh, our first crack at this is we're going to give unlimited tags, bull tags on private land, cut yours in half. And oh, please believe us when we say this is all about killing more cow elk. So to his credit, when the director is on my podcast, he said, boy, if I could go back and change anything, I'd change that one. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, how did that one even get out the door? But, oh, well. So they did that one. That was proposed in November at their December meeting. That created so much rancor that the 7 commissioners told him in their working session, get rid of that. Come give us something new. This is dead in the water. So that night, over the course of 10 hours, the department comes up with a whole new series of regulations. So the ones they'd spent working on for a year got junked, and 10 hours later, we get a new set.
Wow.
That are, they're just like a turd with a different kind of polish on it is about what we got.
I thought you were going to say a turd with a different kind of politician on it.
So, right now at every coffee shop, every lunch break, water cooler, after dinner beer session that's in Montana right now, hunters are talking about this. Like, what is going on here? So, we'll see. We only got to wait a few more days to find out what the vote's going to be.
Yeah.
But if you're a non-resident who applies in Montana, I would wait and see what that is and learn it in full detail before you lay all your chips down on your Montana application.
Yeah, no kidding. Huh. Yeah, and it's in Idaho. We had somebody a couple of years ago that tried, it was a sportsman, and he tried to convince the commission to legalize lighted nocks and mechanical broadheads, which are not legal in the state of Idaho. And it went through the proper channels and everything, and it ended up not making it through. Well, that same person messaged me and said, hey, this is on the table again, but it's being introduced by a legislator, and we need to get the word out to deny this. The very person who tried to get it to go through the proper channels recognizes the danger of having the legislature create elk hunting or hunting regulations in the states, and recognizes, hey, this needs to be killed. It needs to go through the proper channels, not be introduced straight from a legislator to the legislature for them to vote on and create a requirement that the commission has to then enforce. So kudos to him for doing that, but we're seeing it in every state that we're trying to go around the processes that are there to ensure that sportsmen's voices are heard, that science and biology is what's used to manage big game animals, rather than somebody that's got a rich buddy with a bunch of land that they want to allow them to have all the elk tags they want, or whatever it is. It's not the right way to be running fish and game departments, and that's not how they're set up to be ran.
Yeah, and so for the audience wondering why we're talking about this, Corey and I often talk amongst ourselves of how much do we want to drag the content into the ditch of policy and what becomes politics, and how much do we want to just stick to information and stuff. And occasionally we just feel we're doing a disservice to the audience if we don't bring it up and tell them some of these things and tell them how they can make a difference, and remind them that screaming and yelling and ranting on Facebook isn't activism. It isn't advocacy. That doesn't get the job done. Emailing your commissioners, calling your legislator, or whatever, that will hopefully get the job done. That's true involvement. So sorry, folks, if we drug you down in the ditch on this one, but there's a lot going on. Did you ever listen to the Wyoming has a wildlife task force in place right now, and they're talking about possibly changing their resident, non-resident license policy. And they're right now, non-residents get 16% of the limited entry elk tags in Wyoming. I'm not saying this is happening, so I'm almost a little bit hesitant to throw it out there, but when these things happen, when all these discussions and these committees and councils are throwing things out there, everybody who has a personal benefit isn't afraid to throw it out and do it. And there's a proposal that some have kicked around of, well, maybe we should go 90% resident, which I think most people would have a hard time arguing against that because most states are 90-10. But one of the proposals that had been given some, I guess, oxygen to the fire was that of the remaining 10%, half of it you'd have to use a Wyoming outfitter. Hold on here. I'm all about a state and its residents deciding what the allocation should be for non-residents, but I'm not about letting a certain class of businesses take that remaining wildlife resource and say, what do we say we turn this into our own money train here? So I don't know if that one's going to come out of that committee with any teeth to it or any possibility, but you got to be keeping an eye on this stuff, folks.
Yeah, and it's usually slipped in at the last minute. And Wyoming, just for those that might not know or might not remember, but Wyoming, you're required to have an outfitter or a guide if you want to hunt in federal designated wilderness area.
Yep.
And that's we've talked about that as being a welfare program for outfitters that guarantees that so many people, if they want to hunt that geographic area, they have to hire an outfitter. And now, you mentioned they're bringing up a proposal to possibly take half of the available tags for non-residents and also requiring you to have an outfitter. And once again, sounds like a special interest group has their hands in setting policy, which shouldn't happen.
Yeah, right. We should leave that to our departments. But most of this stuff, unfortunately, gets pulled into legislatures. I mean, Montana's legislature is completely out of hand with thinking they know what's best for wildlife. I was given a presentation a few years ago to some Montana State University wildlife students here, and I don't know if the professor found any humor in my statement, but I said, all of you, I think there were quite a few master students in there. I said, all you trying to go on to advanced degrees in wildlife management, you're going about it all wrong. Just get elected to the Montana legislature and you can say that you've got a PhD in wildlife management. It's like, really? Come on. I mean, oh well. So, wow. You want to know another this has nothing to do with, well, it kind of does with elk hunting. So if you watch 60 Minutes on Sunday night, there was a big piece on wolves in Yellowstone. Huh. And I was the hunter that they interviewed in that. We did it. It first rolled out 3 years ago, and then they put it out last year. And then, obviously, because there's a controversy going on about how many wolves left Yellowstone this year, and a lot of them got shot in Montana. I'm getting all kinds of phone calls and emails from East Coast news sources. But if you want to wake up Monday morning to a lot of interesting emails that have a lot of very vulgar language in them, just be on 60 Minutes and say, you know what, wolves are wolves. They don't solve all the world's problems. They aren't the world's worst enemy, and they don't have rainbows shooting out their ass. Whew, I tell you what.
You didn't even say shoot, shovel, and shut up or kill them all or anything. Man.
No. I said, they're just wolves. They're not going to solve world hunger and Mideast peace and everything because and I stole that statement from a friend of mine, Arthur Middleton. Arthur, it's in print, so it can be attributed to him. But I say it all the time now about wolves. Everyone thinks they're the world's greatest things. Well, I got news for you. They don't have rainbows shooting out their ass. So the folks on 60 Minutes, they asked me that question a question so that they'd get that statement from me. They'd ask it multiple times. And if you've ever, it's interesting to see how a show like that is put together. Rome, the producer, and Sarah, great people. But they interview you for 2 hours and they use like a minute and a half of it.
Yeah.
And they have you say things in all kinds of different ways. And so point of all that was, my emails this week have been, my wife handles a lot of my emails. She's like, what did you do? The world is so mad at you today. I'm like, well, you just got to tell the world that you hunt wolves and they, they don't have rainbows. She just looks at me like, you and your big mouth, man. So, again, that had nothing to do with elk hunting. How did I get on that?
I'm not sure.
So,
Wolves kind of have a little to do with elk hunting, but
yeah, they do. So Arizona. Are you applying in Arizona or are you just buying a point this year?
Well, I've been on the phone with you since I was reminded so kindly by the co-host of this podcast that the deadline's coming up. I jumped on and I bought my bonus point while we've been sitting here talking. So
I heard all this clicking noise. There you go. Corey,
otherwise I'd have forgot. Yeah.
Well, that's because you're a busy guy coaching basketball and all the other things. So
we got a lot going on for the next 4 weeks here. So I got it done. I'm in. Yeah. I bought a point. The season dates this year are too early for me to get excited about spending all of my points. So I'm just buying a point this year and not actually applying for a hunt.
Yeah. So you want me to really discourage the audience? About applying in certain places. Remember last year we did the podcast about point creep?
Yeah.
And we said how many years worth of applicants Utah had in its system. Yep. And I told everybody that Utah had 120 years of applicants in their system.
Yeah.
Well, in the last 2 years, that's jumped from 121 years worth of applicants to 134 years worth of applicants in their system.
In the last 2 years.
In the last 2 years.
So we gained 5 years in 2 years. That's like perpetual energy almost, isn't it? I mean, if we can find a way.
You can figure that out.
Yeah, if we can find a way to take point creep and apply the same model to other areas, it could be a positive thing.
There you go. So Utah, you can determine how many people just bought points and how many actually applied. And I keep trying to find that data. I'm sure if I asked Arizona for it, I could find it. Because in Arizona, now that 20% of the tags go to the people with the highest point holders, every year, that number of points it takes to get a tag in that, we'll call it preference draw or whatever, the first part of the draw, keeps jumping and jumping and jumping. What it tells me, much like Utah, there's a ton of people in Arizona that are just buying points.
Yeah. And
I can't tell you if they're residents or non-residents, but there's a bunch of them over there. And now you're one of those point buyers.
Yep, absolutely.
Corey Jacobson is not even going to show up in the draw results for 2022 because all he did was buy a point.
Yep. Well, that and I invested $175 into the state of Arizona.
Yeah, to do so. Yeah, you made a contribution. But so next year, if you jump in with whatever point level you have, folks are going to say, well, how did this happen? I thought I was going to get a tag at 12 points. Corey jumps in with 14 and takes the tag. You're a point creep when you do that.
I'm a creep. Did you just call me a creep?
I did. I called you a point creep.
Oh, man. Huh.
And all you did was buy a point, and I called you a point creep.
I know, man. Well, I have 15 points currently. With my purchase today, that'll give me 16. And I'm just at a point where I've got enough points that I don't want to spend them on a year when the season is too early. I've hunted Arizona twice for myself. I've been there on a couple other hunts with people. And to be able, I mean, if you're okay sitting on water and stuff, early is great. But if you're wanting to get into the peak rut, calling action, the big bulls screaming their heads off, realistically, you're wanting to wait until the 18th or 20th before that really kicks in September. So with it ending so early this year, I don't want to just go to Arizona. I want to experience the rut like I've been able to a couple times down there. So I am, I'm a creep this year. And next year I'm going to jump in with 16 points and possibly draw a tag that doesn't take 16 points to draw.
There you go. So my analysis of Utah and Colorado for this purpose wasn't so much about point creep, but about showing how having a bigger pie, building, putting more elk on the mountain can lessen this point creep thing, whatever you want to call it. So from 2000, what is it? It's been pretty static. 2018, Utah issued 269 non-resident tags. So 3 years later, in 2021, they issued 279 non-resident tags. So, but they went from having 113 years worth of applicants in their system to 134 years worth of applicants in their system. Colorado issued 21,741 non-resident tags, limited entry tags across all weapons types. And in 2018, they had 4.3 years worth of applicants in their system. Or no, 6.9, I'm sorry. Well, go through the 19 draw, the 20 draw, the 2021 draw, and they give away 41 fewer tags to non-residents. But because you churn those non-residents really quick, except at that super high point level, they only have, they have 7.5 years worth of applicants in their system. So they've had about a 9% increase between 2018 and 2021 in how many years of applicants are in their system. But they give away a lot of tags so they can churn non-residents through there. And yeah, they give away a higher percentage of their tags to non-residents. But the point being that let's not lose focus on the fact that if we support groups and get involved in things to build a bigger pie, to put more elk on the mountain, it slows the rate at which creep or whatever you want to call it happens. Yep. So that, to me, that's the real takeaway, is the states that have the more robust elk populations and don't focus on just that high end age class that therefore reduces opportunity, those states can put people through the system a lot quicker than the states with very few elk or a decision that we're going to only shoot 7.5-year-old elk. So, just interesting analysis to compare it. Two neighboring states with two completely different philosophies, and differences in elk numbers, but I think it's worth looking at that to show the value of building a bigger pie. A lot of the things that frustrate us, that bigger pie helps mitigate some of that.
Absolutely.
Did it make any sense there?
100%. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, when you have a limited resource, it is going to increase the demand. And if you can increase that resource, it's going to lessen the demand. And that's what we're all concerned about, is gosh, I can't get a tag here because there's so much demand. I wish that they had a better process. It's not the process is never going to improve. The process of lowering demand is not going to improve unless they make it so expensive that the regular hunter can't afford to be involved in it. I mean, the process is not the solution. No, we need to look at the resource, not the process of accessing the resource. And the way you do that is, like you said, becoming involved in conservation, becoming involved in groups who support and initiate and create an increase in the resource. And once that happens, then we aren't plugged up. It's not a baby diaper stuck in the sewer line. And we're all happy. We can slide right through that sewer line without getting so much as our hands dirty.
Anyone wondering where that comment come from, go listen to last week's podcast, where I don't know why that came out of my mouth, but it did. So now, not just you, but a few other people have emailed Randy. If your septic line is plugged up with a baby diaper, let me know. I'll tell you how to fix it. So it's like, what was I?
It's just a figure of speech, nothing literal here. Randy's septic line is not plugged up with a diaper. It's just it's a good visual, I think, to create. If you tell somebody, you got a chunk of ice stuck in your milkshake straw or something, it's like, oh, okay, that, blow it out. You tell somebody you got a diaper stuck in your sewer line, they get the idea that, hey, this is a nasty problem that we've got going on here.
That's the idea, was to try to make it sound like a nasty problem. Yeah. So I think we'd be not given full credit here if we didn't talk about, like you said, joining groups. So I'm gonna give a plug to the Elk Foundation here, and just here are the news releases from this month of things that they've done. They have granted $500,000 to elk and hunting heritage in Pennsylvania. They granted $100,000 for research in elk areas with chronic wasting disease. Your state of Idaho received $750,000 of funding for wildlife habitat projects. They granted $180,000 to assist with migration research, which is evolving as one of the most critical sciences we have for elk populations, is identifying and conserving these migration corridors. So a lot of people say, well, if it isn't more access, well, I'm not interested. Well, I get that to some degree, but all the access in the world, if it isn't good habitat, if it doesn't have elk on it, well, for elk hunters, it's not worth a whole lot.
Yeah.
So go to rmef.org, sign up, be a member.
And you mentioned they contributed funding for chronic wasting disease research. We just in the last few months have our first cases of chronic wasting disease right here in Idaho, about 2 hours north of my house. And it's affected mule deer, white-tailed deer, and elk that have all tested positive in that area so far.
Really?
So it's a legitimate concern in my home state now.
Yeah. Well, we certainly have had it now for, I think we're at 3-4 years into it here in Montana. That when it first got identified. Now, the more we look for it, the more we find. Imagine that, right?
Yep.
So, but anyhow, I just want people to know that kind of stuff is super important to putting more elk on the mountain, or building a bigger pie, as we say. So hopefully people are interested in doing that. Here we just have a Montana project if people just want to focus on access. And there's a map out on their website of where this 1 point whatever million acres of new and improved access RMEF and their partners have put together. But here's a small critical piece in western Montana over just west of Lolo. 1,040-acre piece. They worked with YT Timber, a timber company, and through RMEF, through funding that was out there, there's a thing called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. They added this 1,040 acres, but it's not always that acreage itself. It's often what acreage it then gets you access to.
Yeah.
So, and how critical it is for elk migrations or other stuff. So there's a lot of things that go into that. But if you go out to their website, it's like every week there's a new announcement of something like that going on. So hopefully
cool.
people will build a bigger pie with with their effort and their money and whatever else it is. So
I did see a user comment come through saying that they'd like to see you and I hunt in, I think the states they listed were Michigan, Minnesota, Kentucky, some of the eastern. I'm not sure if there's actually hunting seasons in all those, but it does bring up the point that the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has been central in establishing elk herds and allowing states to provide hunting opportunities in multiple states east of the Mississippi, where there's never, been an opportunity in a long, long time to see elk or to hunt elk. So, it's again, I think we've mentioned it before, but that bigger piece of the pie doesn't have to be in our backyard. You create a valid hunting season in Tennessee, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Missouri, South Dakota, all these places, and now all these non-residents that everybody's up in arms about that are coming into their states have elk in their home states, and it's going to decrease that demand and that pressure that's being put on the limited resource right now. So, it might not be your backyard where the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation comes in and establishes 1,000 elk for you and your two friends to go hunt, but in so doing back east and in other states, and they're just building that pie for everyone, and everyone benefits from that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people get the message and they act on it. And so we get quite a few questions every year when it gets into application season of people saying, should I just go to Colorado? I come from whatever state. We just buy a tag over the counter, and this is like trying to solve nuclear physics, figuring out all these draw systems and point systems, and I get it. That's why, Corey, if you ever let Idaho adopt a point system, I don't think we could be friends much longer.
Oh, man. I will never let them, but I don't necessarily have the final say in that.
You're not Governor Jacobson?
No, and I hope I never am.
So we had a couple people who said or asked the question of, I'm so far behind the curve, or it's just so overwhelming. It just seems like a way to get more money out of me. I'm going to Colorado. And I fully understand that frustration. And that's why I think we do a lot of content around this, is the fact that these point systems aren't going away. And if you want to go and hunt elk in some state, if you don't have elk in your state, unfortunately, you don't have many options if you opt out of these point schemes, these Ponzi schemes or whatever you want to call them. And I think a lot of people are looking at over-the-counter places like Colorado, and now there's talk in Colorado of, how sustainable is this over-the-counter system anymore? So I throw that out there, that don't think that the landscape of how tags get allocated today is static, and that's what it's going to look like in 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, when you've finally built up enough money, enough vacation time or whatever, where, okay, now I'm going to go start doing some elk hunting. Because if Colorado residents say, we just can't sustain this amount of non-resident over-the-counter elk hunting, and they host more than anybody, that's something you got to be thinking about as you say, heck with all these other states. I mean, look what your state of Idaho did in response to how much non-resident pressure was getting moved to Idaho. you guys made some pretty big changes. And now if you don't get on your computer on December 1st, you're not getting one of those tags in Idaho.
That's a mess. Yep.
So don't think that the systems as they are today, that are in place today, and the rules and the laws and the allocations are going to be that way forever. They change either slightly every year, or in some cases every 8 or 10 years, they change rather dramatically.
Yeah.
So,
and it's all to appease a process. Again, the process isn't the answer. That's why these things keep changing. That's why, Arizona pulled the rug out from under those of us that had high bonus points. And now it's taking 5 to 8 years longer to draw a tag than it did before they changed that. It was to appease the people who were just getting into the system and into the process late, because they knew they didn't have a chance of drawing a tag for 20 years. Now it gives them at least a glimmer of hope. So they're appeased, but at the cost of those who have already invested. And like you said, over-the-counter opportunities are already few and far between. Used to be you could get a general tag in Wyoming almost over the counter on a leftover basis. Same with Montana. Montana, you could buy a tag or a combo license right up almost until the day the season started without even having to think about it. So you could fall back on that almost like it was over the counter. And you've seen Oregon. Oregon's going to a draw format for the east side of the state rather than being over the counter. Idaho and Colorado are basically the only two viable options for over the counter, and both of them recognize that once again the resource is not keeping up with the demand. So the answer is change the process, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, this person said they've only hunted in Colorado because they've not lucked out and drawn a tag, and their frustration is certainly there with these schemes in other states. So they've always hunted Colorado. But now with the crowding there, they're asking us the question, how's the crowding in Montana and Wyoming? It's not as bad. It is not as bad as Colorado. So, but there's also there's a lot more hurdles you got to clear to apply in Montana and Wyoming. Yep. And the allocations aren't as generous as Colorado. Colorado is the most generous of all the states to non-residents by a long stretch. But if I lived in Colorado, I don't know how long I'd let that keep going. I'm just being honest. I'm not sure how long it'll be there. And the reason I bring it up is I've heard some rumblings. Some people would call them grumblings. There might be some ideas for change in Colorado. So,
well, they've already approved the introduction of wolves there, which we know that's going. No, and it has a major impact on hunting, especially when they first get started, and there's no seasons, there's no management, there's no anything to control the population of wolves, and so for those first several years, it's going to have an impact on the resource again. And once that resource dwindles, the first ones that are going to take the hit are those of us who are standing in line wanting to go hunting, especially over the counter. It's got the resource when the resource just dwindles by 1 or 2%, they can handle it without having to change a process. But when it takes a major hit, like it can when predators are introduced, it can be very substantial, the changes to the process that can come out of that.
Yeah. So this person, Curtis, we're using your question as kind of a summary for this. You guys kind of do this in Idaho a little bit, Corey, if I understand, at least with your controlled hunts. You can't draw the same controlled hunt 2 years in a row, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so you have to sit out a year for species. It's not the same controlled hunt. It's the same species. So if you draw in a controlled elk tag, say in 2021, you can't apply for or draw a controlled elk tag in 2022. You have to sit out a year.
Yeah. So this person said, rather than these elaborate point schemes, maybe it'd be just easier if to say, hey, you got to sit out a year. and you can't apply for that at species again the next year. Another point he brings up, he calls it either commit or get. And he says, no more buying points. Make everyone actually apply for a hunt. And if you don't draw, that's how you get your point. No more point buying. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any states out there that have the commit or get philosophy.
No, I read that and I liked it because it gets rid of the people who like, and I'm guilty of it, but there's a system in place. I've got to play the game, so I'm buying points. If I knew that I had a chance to apply for a good unit in Arizona, it wouldn't matter so much, what the season dates are at that point. But given the option, I have the option to choose what season dates I want to hunt. And if that option was taken away from me, then yeah, I'm gonna commit.
Yeah. I'll add another thing that I think would help churn some of this stuff. If you acquire a tag in that state, no matter how, a raffle, an auction, a landowner voucher, it burns your points.
Yeah.
I think that because there's so many places where some of these folks are acquiring tags through other mechanisms but still building points.
Yeah.
And I think Nevada is onto something where if you draw any of your 5 choices, there goes your points.
Yep.
If you draw a leftover in Nevada, there go your points. So there's things these states could do to increase what I call the churn rate, and I wish they would do them. Why not? I mean, did you see the one person asked us if there's a reason why you don't transfer your points to a family member?
I don't think I saw that.
Did you see that email?
Uh-uh.
Okay, there's an email, and this pops up a lot too. Grandpa paid for all these points. He should be able to will them to his granddaughter, to his, whoever. Well, that's not how it works. I don't know of any state that allows for that. And if you take it to the next level of, well, what if that was allowed? People would be applying for points with you'd be down at the nursing home, hey, for an extra $100 of Geritol, I'll put you, let me apply you for points in all these states, and you'd have, every blue hair there, you'd be buying points for them. And,
boy, if that doesn't increase the reality of the visual of a diaper in the sewer line, I don't know what will.
I got to be careful. My grandma on one side called herself a blue hair, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody with that. It's just what my grandma called herself because of how white, and she'd do something with her hair to almost get a purplish tinge to it. She's like, "Oh, I got blue hair today," and she would refer to all of her friends as us blue hair. So sorry. I'm going back to my corner. I'm in timeout. But anyhow, I throw some of these out there because I know people are thinking, well, that is so crazy, Newberg. No one would ever do that. Well, when we have these point schemes, it causes people to start looking at how can I use that scheme, change it, alter it, or amend it to be more to my benefit or more to my favor. And once you start tilting that table a little bit, it seems like the table never stops tilting in the favor of old gray-haired guys like me.
Yep.
I've never been to a legislative hearing that wanted to change the point schemes or the allocations that was anything other than a bunch of old farts like me. You never see any young people there saying, we should really manipulate this scheme so that all the old timers get tags.
That's true.
It's just weird how that works. So, Hey, you're look. Good thing I can't see your video because I know what you're thinking right now. Newberg, can you just get on to something that has to do with elk hunting?
No, this all does. And I think this is the time of year that obviously legislatures are in session. It's application season. I think it's a good time to bring up these topics and educate people on what goes on behind the scene. It's not just you show up at the Walmart on August 30th and buy your elk hunting license and your tag and go hunting anywhere in the state you want to, like it used to be. Things are changing. They've changed and they're continuing to change, and the direction that it's going is not always favorable. And, like becoming a member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, that's important, but so is becoming involved in these issues in your states. Washington has a proposal right now on bear hunting. Colorado has proposals on predator hunting. All these things that if we as sportsmen are not involved in, if we're not educated on it and then involved in it, it's going to get taken away, and it's going to change to the tune of taking away things that we value. And sometimes all it takes is, like you said, calling or sending an email. And if they get enough of it and realize, hey, there's a lot of sportsmen who are aware of this issue, they're passionate about this issue, and we don't want the backlash that's going to come if we pass this, they're usually pretty cognizant of the outcomes and the repercussions of their actions there. And beyond that, you've got voting opportunities coming up shortly that, if somebody is introducing these kinds of things, let your votes be heard and make your changes at the ballot.
Yeah. And, one of the things that's been fun out of every dark storm comes a little bit of bright sunshine. Watching the Wyoming or the Washington bear thing, the number of new grassroots activists in the hunting space who popped up is so impressive to me. I'm going to be in the Seattle area doing a trade show or a sports show this weekend, and I'm so excited to talk to a lot of those Washington hunters and say, add a way to do it. Give them hell, because they are changing it there. They are not giving up. And actually, some of the commissioners even resigned, and they're hammering their governor. Replace with this kind of person. This is the person who sees the bigger picture of wildlife. So I'm really pleased to see the activism, the advocacy, whatever you want to call it, of just grassroots people in Washington state who said, I've had enough. I'm going to, even if it's a little Facebook group or an Instagram group, or you form a group within your town or your community, you're making a big difference. And we're seeing that as the pendulum now in Washington, the agency or the commission, not the agency was against these changes in bear hunting from the start, but their commission appointed, political appointed. So you're making a difference. Colorado, I'm seeing how people are really getting active about these issues related to mostly cats. I think lion and bobcats.
Yeah.
Same in Arizona. A bunch of the groups, as Arizona goes through these 5-year season setting processes, and right now they're doing it related to mountain lions. And so the normal drive-by litigators, raised all kinds of stink. Oh, you're not using the right science, as you're formulating this 5-year plan on lions and bobcats. Well, fortunately, the Arizona Game and Fish folks said, hey, we'd like to hear from the rest of you, because these folks are flooding us with chain emails or whatever you want to call them, form letters. And wow, out of the woodwork came a bunch of great Arizona groups and really rallied to the cause. And I know that they're getting a lot of emails from hunters now and comments. And so as much as we get frustrated when this stuff happens, the point I'm trying to make there is that being frustrated is one thing, acting on it, doing what I showed as examples in Washington and Colorado and Arizona, that's how progress gets made. that's what pushes it back. So keep doing that, folks. Makes me smile when
absolutely.
I see that. So, but anyhow, I think I've
What
probably,
else?
well, I got some other topics written down here, Corey, but they're heavy on the tangential side. And I really feel like when we get into policy stuff, I really drive us in the ditch. And I feel bad about that, but I don't feel bad because it's so important. These legislators, policymakers know that when we just stay in the arena, the box, the football field, if you can view science-based management as like this football field, and here are the boundaries, they like to grab the football and take it over and play in the sandlot or up in the stands or somewhere else because they know they can be way more effective in the political arena, in the public opinion arena. So just be aware that they're taking our football and going elsewhere to play with it, and we got to go tackle them. We can't just say, "Hey, they stole our football, bummer." No, we got to go there and get it back. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but it's
that's a good one.
It's what we got to do, and so I appreciate all the listeners who do that, and I appreciate anyone who's motivated to think about doing it. So, and did you make the Wyoming deadline, I guess, is a question that passed last week. Some people notified me.
I did. Yep.
Good. I was doing a live event last night, and we were talking about Arizona's deadline coming up, and one person types in, "Don't be like me. Even though Randy told me about the Wyoming deadline, I spaced it out." I'm like, oh, bummer. But
we hear it every year with every state, and it's we're talking about Arizona now and the deadline being February 8th, and I guarantee on February 9th we'll get emails and messages saying, I missed the deadline and you guys even told me.
Yeah. So oh well. So Destination Elk YouTube channel.
Yeah.
People can watch it out on your YouTube channel, right?
They can on the Elk 101 YouTube channel. We episode 6 is currently out, and for those who we're getting quite a few comments about the schedule. In the past, we've done a video a day, for like 30 straight days. We actually have a schedule this year, so it's every Tuesday and every Thursday at 6:00 p.m. Mountain Time. A new episode is released, and so we've got 17 episodes plus 2 feature episodes that will be the Alaska Elk Hunt and then our hunt with Outfitters for Hope, where we took Jack on a hunt here in Idaho, and Jack is legally blind. He had a brain tumor, a lot of health issues there, but one of the coolest young men I've ever had a chance to share an elk camp with or even get to talk with. So we'll be doing a couple of really cool films on those 2 hunts after the regular series is over, which I think it gets over around the middle of March.
Cool. Well, I want to watch both of those. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, folks, go there and watch it, and it'll be entertaining. I can assure them of that. And when someone other than me and Michael are out there, there's a good chance an elk might get called in and shot. But I knew you had a strategy there. You wanted a little comic relief, so you said, "Hey, Randy and Michael, you guys want to be in here this year?" So
I'll tell you what, there is definitely some comic relief in that camp.
Yeah, you should see the scars on my bottom side where I sat on that prickly pear.
Well, that's coming up here in episode 7 or 8, I think. We even have a really cool image of you pulling prickly pear out of the seat of your pants.
Did I have my britches still up at that point?
You did, yeah. Okay. It's all PG. It's all safe for the kids to watch.
Because when it got really bad, I had to drop my drawers, and Dale took my Gerber center drive and was plucking and pulling, and man, the elasticity of the human skin is pretty extreme. Like when one of those would pop out, you'd hear a snap as my skin would slap back into place. It's like, man, yeah,
Wow.
it shows how little muscle tone I have anymore when your skin is that flappy and loose. But it sure attracts a lot of prickly pears, and that's all Michael's fault because I said, Michael, let's find a shade tree with no prickly pears around. Oh yeah. Well, he finds it was like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree version of a shade tree. I mean, Michael's not a little guy. And I'm like, well, this tree is like a pool cue. It's got one limb on it, and it's about as big around as a pool cue. And we're going to get some shade out of this. So they say, oh, I think I see an elk out there. Well, I just dropped my pack, so I grabbed my binos and I'm I'm not very steady. So I'm like, well, I better sit down. Quick as I sit down, I know something's wrong. It's like, So, yeah. Moral of the story, don't get excited when you're looking through your binoculars and sit down without first clearing the area underneath your buttocks. Is that what Forrest Gump
That's
said?
something we just don't even have to worry about in most of the areas that we hunt in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming. You go to New Mexico and Arizona and Nevada and southern Utah, and you better watch where you're sitting. In fact, I think that's the name of the episode, Watch Where You Sit in Elk Country or something.
Oh, no. Why do I get a feeling I'm going to be the thumbnail of that video?
You are the poster child, the poster boy of that episode, for sure.
All right. Well, I deserve it. That was stupid on my part. That's the second time while out hunting I've plopped down on a cactus, full on. I mean, like plant, right butt cheek, boom. You think I'd know better, but oh well.
Does Michael have access to your wife's best unknown seasoning for grouse?
Nope.
Okay.
Nobody does.
Say, if he does, and all I did was put a 12-pound rock in your pack. I did not direct you to sit on cactus. So.
No, Michael doesn't have that. Michael doesn't like fish. He loves to fish, but he doesn't like to eat them. I said, well, if you get the Randy Newberg walleye version of fish cooking, you're going to like them. I don't know. So I took him and Marcus up to Fort Peck last summer, caught a bunch of walleyes, filleted them right there, cooked them up in the campground with my exclusive not shared seasoning. And Michael, he was like a rat on a Cheeto, man. He was, oh my gosh. Well, it isn't necessarily the fish. It might be the cook as to why you didn't like fish. So, oh well. Enough of that. We better let the folks go. Corey, I don't know that we accomplished anything. I had all these emails sorted for this podcast and only got to about 2 of them. I'm sorry, folks. But please keep sending them.
Can we tease some of the topics that we'll talk about next time?
Sure. You go right ahead.
Okay. No, I don't know them. You said you have them listed there. And
well,
I just thought maybe if you had a couple, we could let them know. So if they are thinking about canceling their subscription to this podcast, maybe there'll be something coming up that'll keep them hanging on.
Yeah. Well, most of them. And I don't know what you're going to do about this, Corey, but a lot of them are asking about your non-weight bearing workout program or whatever the heck you called it.
Ooh.
That you generated more than half of the comments was because of your little 3-sentence blurb. So you get to handle that, not me, because my workout involves a cup of coffee and a donut.
I'm not sure if that qualifies for a workout.
Well, you're at the gym. That's what I'm doing. So,
yeah, we can. I'll prepare a little bit more, and there's things in the works that might not be able to share all of it right now because I don't have it fully dialed in. But there are definitely some things I can share that are absolutely working. And I'm 46. I'm not putting on muscle like I did 20 years ago. I'm not, my lung capacity and cardio is not what it once was. And so I've had to shift a little bit in my workout and in my strategy. But it's all focused on being prepared for elk season. And if elk season was right now today, I think I would be more prepared physically than I've probably ever been. And I've still got 6 months left to go. So I'm learning more. And part of it comes from the injury I had 2 years ago, where I tore the calf muscle on the back of my leg and realized that there were weaknesses, not necessarily in my calf muscle or in my Achilles, but in my hip, which was causing some knee pain, and just the entire structure of my muscle skeletal system was causing issues, and that's where the weakness manifested, was in my calf. But in going through rehab and physical therapy on that, realizing my hamstring was weak as any hamstring could be, and I was putting all of my force when I'm climbing a mountain in my ankles and my calves, which, that's great until they get tired and wear out. And anyway, we'll dive into that.
You make me feel like such a slug. What did you have for lunch?
Randy, you put yourself in these corners sometimes. I had a salad with a can of chicken on top of it that was 18 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of carbs. It also had some sweet peppers and some cheese, and I had 2 cups of cottage cheese. Really focusing on the protein consumption right now.
Wow, you're making me look bad.
Oh, an avocado really? Also.
An avocado that finally makes it to the produce stand in Bozeman, Montana. It looks like a buffalo chip.
Isn't worth eating.
As my one friend Kenny Obermeyer used to say, you would need 2 of them, one to poop on and one to cover it up with. That's how bad you don't buy fruit in Bozeman, Montana. Trust me on that. You buy canned fruit.
My wife, I gave my wife a hard time for a long time about her health food and organic this and all that, but she discovered a place called Trader Joe's, and it's as hippie and as organic as you can imagine. It's probably everything anti-hunting related, but with that being said, the produce there is top notch, and it's not all that expensive. I get a bag of 6 bite-sized avocados for like $1.99 or $2.99 or something.
There's not a Trader Joe's in Montana. What am I going to have to do? Drive to Boise to go to Trader Joe's?
Well, by the time you get back to Bozeman, it would probably look like a buffalo chip again. So.
Probably Trader Joe's, Bozeman or Montana. I'm going to see where they have. I'm doing this right now. It comes up with Monterey, California.
They're certainly not the closest one to you.
No, there's some in Idaho. That's it. No, we're out of luck.
Trader Joe's is missing out. Are all the yuppies and everything that live over in Bozeman and Missoula? You'd think they'd have Trader Joe's on every corner.
There's one in Boise and Meridian. So, and then there's a question. No, that says there are only 8 states do not have a Trader Joe's: Alaska, Arkansas, Hawaii, Mississippi, Montana, South Dakota, West Virginia, and Wyoming. So,
oh my goodness, that is a select group of states. When we Arkansas, Mississippi.
Yeah, when we got a Walmart in Bozeman, Montana in like 1998, I said this place is going to hell in a handcart. And that was kind of, that's when things, and then we got a Home Depot, and then we got a Lowe's, and then we got an Outback Steakhouse, and all this other, Olive Garden. And if we get a Trader Joe's here, I'm packing my stuff, and there's going to be a for sale sign out on my shack out there, and I'll be getting the hell out of here, Trader Joe's.
Well, and I do have to drive 2 hours to ours, so it's not completely local, so we're still okay.
That's why I don't do Starbucks. We got a Starbucks here. Things went to hell when we got a Starbucks, too. That was like the final nail in the coffin.
And you mentioned a Helena hand cart or something. I always said if I was going to start a business in Helena, Montana, it would be a hand basket business. I mean, that is marketing like you can't believe. I would own. I would own Helena hand baskets.
There you
That's
go.
just, I mean, I'm surprised if nobody has that.
All right.
They could do hand carts too. Hand carts and hand baskets.
If anybody starts that business in Helena, Montana, you owe Corey Jacobson a royalty. Corey, you're late. You told me you had an appointment 4 minutes ago. I'm going to let you go.
I've got basketball practice to get to. So,
all right. Thanks, Corey. Take care, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, guys.